So the next thing that I've chosen to do is add in the dynamics for this piece. And the reason I've chosen to do this is I find it's a little bit easier to add the crescendos and the decrescendos and to make them look a little bit neater when I've already got my dynamics in the piece. So in this instance, I'm going to go to my first measure right here. I've already got my expression tool selected. So I'm going to double click on that note right there, and we want dynamics. Now, I've actually memorized already several of these meta tools is what they're called. But if you look in the top corner here, it says if I hit 6, then it'll actually give me this mezzo piano. From earlier, I saw that 6 is the meta tool for mezzo piano. So what I'll do is I'll hit the 6 and click on the note that I want a mezzo piano under, like that. And then we've got a Mezzo Forte. Now, the nice way that they've set up these meta tools is that they're actually just in numerical order, so that the lower numbers are a louder dynamic level and the higher numbers are a softer dynamic level. So since 6 was Mezzo Piano, if I hit 5 and click on it, we've got a Mezzo Forte. And for a forte, we'd hit 4 and click, and then we've got our forte. And memorizing these meta tools can be really useful so that you can just quickly click those in. All right, so our next dynamic is on measure 17, and that is going to be a mezzo forte, and that was 5. What I love about this too is that 5 is sort of your baseline, that mezzo forte. It's right in, in the middle of your keypad, and because of that, it's sort of right in between as far as dynamic level goes. That's that mezzo forte. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my smart shapes, and I want to add in the crescendos and decrescendos. We're going to start with our crescendo. Now, so you know, these are actually smart shapes that are assigned to beats instead of to notes. So when I click and drag this out, the way Finale is thinking about these is that it's not thinking about them in terms of it being on necessarily a specific note, but rather within the measure, within beats here. And let's say that I only wanted to copy and paste the crescendos or the decrescendos. Since these are a smart shape that's assigned to the beat, I could actually use my filter to only do the smart shapes assigned to beats, and that would leave out slurs as well as dynamics, articulations, etc. We've got that right there. And I always like to make sure that these are even. And so there's a way we can do that. We're going to click and drag around these smart shapes, and I'm going to align them. Oh, it takes me a second. Vertically. Never mind. That's not it. Align them horizontally. There we go. And now they're even here, and that gives a nice look. I'm just going to edit these a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So that it looks a little bit cleaner. So it's right about even with those mezzo pianos. And in fact, this would be a good place to use our filter. We're going to use just beats. I'm going to copy that, and there we go. We've got our crescendo and decrescendo. Also, we've got a big crescendo from measure 9 going into the forte. And so let's go crescendo going into the forte. There we go. And if you look, it's kind of even with that, but not quite with that. So I'm actually going to pull it up just a little bit, and let's pull it in so it's not quite up against the measure as much. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that guy up so that it looks just about even, like that. There, maybe. There we go. And that'll be fine for now. Let's see, we also have a decrescendo going from measure 14, and that is going to go to the mezzo forte. So we got 16, 15, 14. There's 14. Now, I found it can be a little bit tricky to get this to go from here and get it onto this next line. Oh, I actually just did it. There we go. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to do that. If you're finding it difficult, what I've on occasion done is I just move that measure up and fit as many measures as I need to until we can get that all on one measure there. And finale has this really nice feature that it will have that decrescendo carry over onto the next line, like that. Excellent. We've got just one more of our decrescendos, and that's in the last three measures. So let's go, and here we go, from there and to the end. So there's a decrescendo there. All right, and we've got those in. And I always tend to look over the little details that are the small things like fermatas and ritardandos. And so I'm going to make sure that I've got those in before I start adding in the finger numbers. So we've got a ritardando on measure 14. So we've got our ritardando right there. And we also have a fermata just a couple measures later. And so let's get our articulation tool. Now, sometimes finding where these different items are at can be a little bit tricky, and so I'll just kind of play around, and if you're ever not sure and you want to look up, there is a wonderful help manual that you go to help and user manual. It's very extensive, and a lot of the things that I've learned how to do on Finale have come by just looking at this user manual. Now, I was just trying to put the fermata in, which I happen to know is the F meta tool, and for some reason it wasn't working. And this is one of those tricky things that can happen in Finale, that if you're not sure what's happening, that you might even need to look it up or kind of look around. In this instance, this happens to be on layer 1. And for some reason, it just automatically went to layer 2. So I'm going to make sure we've got layer 1 selected, and there we go. Excellent. Now we've got our fermata. Fermata's in there. Excellent. All right. Now, there is a default thing that we've got in Finale, which are finger numbers. The default for those, gratefully, is just the number. So if I'm on my articulations, I can click 5, and that's the meta tool for number 5, which is really handy. It's not hard to remember that way. There's a different way that we could do this, and I want to show you how we could do this as well. And it just depends on how much extra work that you want to put in. We won't talk about it in this video. And just as I'm editing, I'm looking at how long this video is, and so I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here. And next video, we'll talk more particularly about how we add in those fingerings.